Okay, guys, so many people out there online talk about this film and how rotten it is and how disappointing it was and is. And I've heard so many people just bad-mouthing it everywhere that despite the fact that this is definitely not made for me and it's definitely not the type of genre that I would normally watch or even review, I'm going to review this because I just couldn't take it any longer. I fired up my Netflix and this thing was just staring me in the face, and I said, what the hell, I'm just going to take a look at why everybody calls this so rotten. And I'm going to have to say that having watched this with a complete open mind, I'm going to agree that it is completely rotten. And I agree with the scores. We have a 42% on the tomato meter and a 27% on that audience score. You can see right away that there are only 8,663 audience reviews, a very small number compared to any other big budget movie. Well, that's because this is to be found on Netflix, and apparently it went straight to Netflix. I know it had a theatrical release, but it went straight to Netflix probably because whoever was responsible just wanted to offload this thing in the quickest way they could. It was that bad, and I can see that it's a total financial loss just by the sheer amount of CGI in this thing. The visual effects budget must have been massive, and I'm certain that Oprah Winfrey being the biggest face on this, I'm sure she didn't do this for free, and so yeah, it's probably a total financial flop. In any case, Rotten Tomatoes doesn't really have much information on this film. It doesn't even have a list of any of the actors or actresses beyond just the little girl that plays the main character. I guess her name is Storm Reed. I don't know her from anywhere else, and I don't know anyone else in this. One or two characters I did recognize. I'm not going to name them. They probably don't want to be named. They're certainly the recognizable faces in this are really almost like cameo roles. They're very minor. They don't really do a whole lot. I would say that this thing is just largely an exercise in visual effects, and it felt like something that to me would have made a better music video than an actual film. And let's get right into this. I certainly have a list, but first we're going to get into audience reviews and find out why nobody else likes this 2018 film, or very few people do. We have one from 3 days ago. January of 2020. Half a star. I want a refund of my 2 hours, please. Well, the running time isn't quite 2 hours. It's 1 hour and 49 minutes, but yeah, it felt like 2 hours or more. My finger was hovering over the fast forward button at a lot of points of this because I was wondering why it was going to drag on and on and on. Anyway, if I had to put a star review on this, I would give it 1 star just because a lot of effort was put into making it look very pretty. Certainly some of that prettiness looked a little off-putting and weird too, but I'll give it 1 star for that type of effort. Otherwise, I would largely agree with the half a star that a movie was made and people got paid. Yeah, I'll say 1 star. Now I have a list. There are only really two big plot problems in this for me. You know, I could probably go through this. A professional movie reviewer would probably go through this and find more than just two plot holes. But I found only two that stuck out to me that kind of, mattered, if you will. And the first plot hole is that the father character in this, he was played by Chris Pine. Again, he's not credited on Rotten Tomatoes as being in this. I'm not sure why. But Chris Pine plays the dad of the main character. And he is lost in an alternate reality or a distant part of the universe. It's not clear on exactly which one this is. You can just say that he got lost in an evil realm of the universe somewhere, and his daughter is going off to rescue him. Well, he could have escaped from where he was at any time. He had the ability to do so. He just didn't for some reason, and he just stayed out there in this evil realm of the universe for 4 years. And the movie actually showed you straight up that he could just put some thought into it and escape, go back to Earth at any time he wanted to. But He just didn't. He needed to stay out there and stay lost for all those years so that the protagonist, our young girl hero, would have a motivation to go out into the big bad universe and look for him. The plot breaks down real simple. There's a daughter. She's the main character. I guess she's a teenager. Maybe she's 14, 15, something like that. If the movie actually named her age, I don't recall. It was the least of the movie's focal points. There's I'm going to say she's a teenage daughter. She goes on a rescue mission across the universe to save her dad, and she's enabled by these, I don't know if they're witches or spirits or magical characters from a parallel world. The movie doesn't really tell you what they are. One of them is, of course, Oprah Winfrey, a gigantic Oprah Winfrey with lots of visual effects around her that are kind of odd. In any case, she's assisted by these weird supernatural characters, and she goes off to rescue her dad, and she takes along her younger brother and I don't know, sort of a boy next door romance type character. And that's another part of this that's weird. The movie's actually suggesting that there's some kind of romantic subplot to this between this teenage girl and this teenage boy, and yet this is supposed to be a movie for kids, I guess, in particular little girls, but they're trying to put some teenage romance into this very subtly, but it's a little too not subtle because as a 40-something white dude, I could pick up on this quite easily. And this movie doesn't really know who it's made for. It feels very much like a music video. A lot of the scenes feel very disconnected and have kind of strange music choices, like a music video montage at points in it. And it felt like, yeah, I'm watching a music video, kind of different weird visual effects scenes put together. It feels like it's very disconnected, and that each scene is drawn out like really long and drawn out to be emotional, but it doesn't work. The characters don't feel emotional to me. They don't feel like they're anything beyond cardboard cutouts. And I know exactly what's going on. It's not like I'm confused about what's going on, but I just don't feel anything. And as an adult, as a 40-something white male, so to speak, it feels like something that's supposed to be at times a teen romance, and at other times it feels like it's supposed to be some kind of epic adventure. And then at other times it feels like it's made for little kids, and it's supposed to preach to them about the importance of believing in yourself, and it wants to be a little kids preaching type thing. And it's all over the place and doesn't feel like it knows who the actual target audience is. Like it's trying to target all kinds of different weird things. And it's a Disney production, so I don't understand if they were trying to make this just a general purpose family movie, because it doesn't come across that way. It has a lot of darker themes and really depressing, darker themes in this, and imagery that would not be suitable for a little kid, and it's too boring for a little kid. I mean, little kids would just fall asleep. At several parts in this movie, little kids would just nod out, or they would zone off, or they'd want to go do something else. They wouldn't be able to sit through this. They wouldn't have the attention span. It would take an adult or a teenager to have the type of attention span to follow this from front to back. And it was a struggle even for me as an adult. Okay, so it's not for little kids, but on the other hand, it's not for adults either, because it's very much preaching to little kids. It's in that mindset. It's very weird. It feels very disjointed. I just sat through the whole thing just because of the visuals. I wanted to see how weird and expensive the visuals were going to get, because straight away they were right in our face. They were very out front. They were very bold, too bold, a little cringy at the times. It was a little over the top, where I thought I was in some kind of laundry detergent commercial at the beginning of this, like I was in some kind of weird Febreze commercial. That's how it popped out to me with the visual effects. And then other times it felt like we were in some kind of I don't know, like a family time type commercial for clothes or something. And then at other times it felt like I was inside a music video, and that was the type of music playing, like I should be watching something on MTV, or I don't know where music videos are today, but it felt very much like MTV at parts of this. And I don't know what they were trying to do. I don't know what the director was trying to do, but I can say it was a straight up fail for me, because if it wasn't for me just wanting to see the visual effects, I would have just shut the thing off. So it's definitely rotten. And the other, before I get too distracted and rambling on this, the other big plot problem for me was at the beginning of this film, it sets up like a scientific, technical explanation for how the father character and the mother character, they're scientists and they want to find some way of traveling across the universe. And they are using technology, they're using equations and math and technology equipment of different sorts, lasers, and they've got computer monitors everywhere, and etc. So you're definitely on a footing that it's something to do with technology. They're trying to make a breakthrough technologically to travel across the universe, to go faster than light, etc. Then it kind of turns into a film where, yes, you can travel across the universe, but it's all in your mind. You do it through force of will. And the movie's kind of in both of these places at the same time. The father character is a scientist, and he uses a formula and discovers some frequency that allows him to open a portal to another place in the universe. Okay, fine, but then later he's just doing it by wishing it with the power of his thought or suggestion, and so is everybody else. All the magical characters like Oprah Winfrey and her sidekicks, they use some kind of mental powers to travel through this portal, and the main character, the teenage girl, she learns how to do this too with just the power of her mind. And the scientist dad escapes from where he is by using the power of his mind. What was the point of all the technology? It doesn't work. The movie forgets about this. It set up a technological thing and then totally forgot about that and made it a spiritual power of thought type of thing. Two big real problems in the plot for me. The rest of it was like stylistic problems, characterization problems, but I only, believe it or not, just had those two major plot logic fails for me. If those hadn't been there, I would have said that everything was logical enough for a fantasy film like this. But no, those two plot problems just stuck out to me right away, and the movie made no attempt to reconcile them or fill them in as plot holes. Anyway, let's before I ramble too much, let's just go on through audience reviews. I'm not going to entertain anything above 3 stars. That's why I call this rotten reviews. So we have another half star from 4 days ago. So bad, this movie was so bad that I pray to myself that I never see it again. Okay, half a star, January 2, 2020. This was honestly the worst movie of all time. If you have ever read the book, you will be sorely disappointed. If you never read the book, the movie is still confusing. Disclaimer, read the book and my son and I were doing a literary analysis. We kept shooting holes in the plot, the characters, the whole story. We honestly believe the people at Hollywood uncovered and dusted off this book, thought the title looked interesting, got the names out of the book, and made up this whole movie. So that's somebody that knows what's supposed to be happening from the book, and they're saying this is a straight up fail as an adaptation of that book. I'll take their word for it. Nobody's told me otherwise, and I went into this not knowing a thing about the book, never read the book, don't know the plot of the book, don't know anything about this. I just had an open mind. I wanted to find out what the problem was here. Well, just as a standalone movie, I didn't find it that confusing. I understood what the director was trying to do, but it just felt very disconnected and it failed in everything it was trying to do. But it didn't confuse me outright. But I could see that some people would be. Maybe their attention wandered off, because you really have to keep your attention focused at parts of this because it is very long. Like each scene is drawn out needlessly long for some reason. I guess the director thought that making the running time of each scene really long was going to make it more dramatic or something, but it just became boring, and I could see that your attention would fail, and then you would become confused. But no, I wasn't confused at all. Just found it very boring at parts. 2 stars. December 29, 2019. A Wrinkle in Time is absolutely gorgeous to look at. I'd say it even deserves Oscar consideration for costume and production designing. However, the film falters in a lack of focus, bouncing around from place to place rather clumsily. Yeah, I will largely agree on that. Most of the visual effects are nice to look at. I wouldn't say they're award winning, but they're very pleasant to look at. You just want to see more of them, kind of like eye candy. In fact, it reminded me of Candyland in a lot of ways, mixed with a laundry detergent commercial at other parts. But yeah, it falters because of a lack of focus. Yeah, it's very disconnected. Like you go from place to place and it feels like there's no connecting theme between these places. And it's just depressing in one part and then very uplifting and spiritual in another part, and no real connective tissue between. It's very, yeah, all over the place, clumsy. And you don't really understand what's going on. Like, you go to a scene that's supposed to represent some alien planet, and it shows you a lot of things on this alien planet, but it does it in a way that you don't get a sense of time and space and distance. So it's almost like you're in a simulation of an alien planet, if you will, like almost like you're in the holodeck in Star Trek. You know that it's a simulation, and you don't really have a lot of connective stuff between different simulated parts. It felt like that. It didn't feel real to me. It was just visually stunning. Um, 1.5 stars, December 26, 2019. A really bad movie. Watched this with my cousin, and we were really wondering why we went. Well, I feel sorry for you. If you saw this in the theater, wow, you were probably confused and bored and upset that your ass got sore watching this, because I don't know where it was released in the theater. Maybe it had a wide release. I don't know. But the first time I heard of this, it was people just bagging on this on the internet, saying it was no good. And I just found it on Netflix. Maybe it's been on Netflix for a long time. I just happened to scroll across it yesterday, and here we are. 1 star, December 26, 2019. What a total letdown on one of my favorite books of all time. The first time I watched it, I fell asleep, but figured I'd give it another try. Was a total waste of time. Did the writers even read the book? It was super annoying that they had to throw in all this politically correct crap too. Pass. Then to make it worse, the end song is DJ Khaled. What the fuck? Yeah, it felt like a music video at times in 2 or 3 parts. I actually liked the music, but it didn't belong there. It felt like I should be watching a music video. And yeah, the DJ Khaled, I agree 100% on that. Politically correct, yes, it did try to do some politically correct stuff. It didn't feel too heavy to me because it was too disconnected, and it didn't land for me. So I kind of recognized it, but it didn't hit me in the face real hard. But it could, that's one of those things where it's a matter of your opinion. Maybe it really slapped some people hard. I just thought this thing was so disconnected and unemotional, where it was really trying to be emotional, that stuff, I saw it, but it didn't really affect me at all. Not enough to offend me, but it is there. It is there. 1.5 stars, December 23rd, 2019. This was a boring movie for me. Yes, agreed. 1 star, bad adaptation, very bad. 1.5 star, this movie lays sweetness down so heavily I now have diabetes. Yeah, I'm thinking of the words Candyland. It felt like Candyland, but at the same time, we were in a Candyland type environment, but then we went dark and depressing and very, too much for even little kids. But by the time the dark and depressing, mood took over in the middle part of the film, I would imagine that any little kids trying to watch it would have already been asleep, so they probably wouldn't have noticed it. They were asleep by that point. 1 star, terrible. Couldn't even finish it the time through with a group of 6. Yeah, if you were with little kids, most of them probably nodded off or ran up and down the aisles throwing popcorn at each other, because they're not going to be able to sit through this thing. I could barely sit through it. I'm almost 50 and I could barely sit through this thing. And I keep saying, I am a 40-something white dude, and you know who I'm referring to. If you get that reference, yeah, I'm still going to critique this, because Disney makes movies for general audiences, for everybody, not just for the little kids. So I feel very much entitled as a 40-something-year-old white dude to critique this, and I'm going to continue doing so. 1.5 stars, December 3rd, 2019. Stunningly silly. Just another typical I hate white men stories under a facade of fantasy, which is fine if it had at least been compelling. Yeah, I don't think the political correctness was that heavy. I didn't get the sense that it hated white men. Other people have said that they got that from it. No, I just thought it was rather boring, and it tried to be all emotional and sappy at times, and it just didn't work for me. Um, but people are saying that yes, it has these PC or SJW or woke messages in it. Um, Hardly registered to me. I was too wrapped up in watching the visuals and wondering just how expensive this was going to get. And it got very, very expensive. Half a star, October 2019. Meg and her boyfriend were amazing. The movie itself was horrible, visually beautiful, but being a huge fan of the books my whole life, it left me wanting and I found it boring. So there's more than one book. Is that true? This reviewer is saying books, plural. So yeah, it might be real disappointing if you're really into this franchise, so to speak, and then this boring ass thing comes along. Half a star, October 2019. The worst movie I've ever seen in theaters. The textbook definition of an epic failure. 1.5 stars. A horrible plot with bad acting, stupid scenes, and tons of cheesy moments. I didn't even enjoy a second of this movie. 1.5 stars. Just a mess of a movie. 1.5 stars. The movie is slow and the acting mediocre. I struggled so much to stay awake during the film. Let's see what's on my list. Well, it's kind of in order, on the in order of when I encountered them in the running time. At the top of my list, yeah, the teachers, there are teachers talking to each other in the school. There's quite a lot of footage, like maybe 20 minutes of the beginning part of the film is spent showing you how the kids are bullied in school and the teachers are mean to them as well. And it doesn't give you a real good explanation on why the main character is treated so horribly by the other students. Now, I'm not saying that. Kids bullying other kids have to have a real reason, but in a film, you have to give us something. There has to be some reason why the whole school is bullying this girl. To me, it felt like it wasn't explained, and I just couldn't get into it. It didn't feel believable to me. Not only that, but the teachers were overheard saying mean things about the kids, and it was very convenient. And the thing that really struck me as not believable on top of that was that when you heard the teachers, kind of from a distance, the youngest kid, overhears the teachers bad mouthing his sister, and the dialogue is just very corny and not believable. And I know it's a kid's movie at parts, but the dialogue feels very fake and forced, and it's not convincing at all. I'm not saying the actors did bad jobs. They just, whoever wrote the script, the dialogue, it didn't feel real. It felt like they need to go back to dialogue school, or they need more practice. It didn't feel real. And we spent a lot of time with them just being bullied for no apparent reason. I mean, I know kids bully kids, but you have to give us some reason why, even if it's a fucked up reason of why the kids are bullying them. There was nothing shown in this, the main character, this teenage girl. There was nothing about her to me that seemed weird or off-putting that the kids would have needed to make fun of her. It didn't make sense to me at all. She seemed like a completely normal kid, yet all the other kids just felt like treating her like shit. It didn't make sense. Um, let's see what else is on my list here. Yeah, I wrote down that it has a slow start, and right next to that, I wrote that it's 24 minutes into the film, and we still hadn't gotten to any action or anything. Nothing had really happened. Yeah, it dragged a lot at the beginning, and I'm thinking that if they wanted little kids to watch this, they would have been nodded off at 23 minutes into this, long before anything actually happened. They're completely asleep. So if this was made as like a bedtime story from Disney, it's very effective. It will get the kids to sleep within that 23-minute window. I had to make a note of it because I looked at the running time, and I'm thinking, wow, nothing has happened yet. What is going on? And sure enough, 23 minutes when I actually checked. Um, yeah, how does the little kid know everything? There's a little kid character. I don't know how old he is. Maybe he's 6 or 7 or 8 at the oldest. And somehow when all these magical characters show up in the plot, they just show up in the real world from time to time. kind of show up right in the living room of the characters. They show up in an abandoned house down the street from the characters. Okay, fine, it's a fantasy for kids, but this little kid, he just happens to know who all these characters are and what their motives are and where they come from. And really, who's been schooling him? Has he been reading all the books ahead of time and he's there to tell us all about it? It doesn't make any sense. All the other characters are confused when they see these magical characters showing up, as I would be, or any normal human being would be. Yet the little kid's like, oh, you don't know the queen? Let me tell you all about her and what she's doing here. What? Um, there's a part where they encounter this I guess, magical side character. This, I don't know if she's a Disney princess or what she is. She's kind of like a fat Hindu or Indian Disney princess character type. And she's in this house reading books, stacks of books in this abandoned house that's down the street from where they live. Okay, fine. And they go into her house, and everybody's just like, who is this lady and what is she doing here and what's going on in here? And that's the normal reaction. But the little kid that led them into this house, he's like, oh, I know who she is and what she's doing, and let me tell you all about her. What? What? This is just weird. And all through the movie, this little kid that's like 8 years old at the oldest, and it's hard to understand what he's saying because they wrote him as an adult in his speech. So this 8-year-old kid or 6-year-old kid, whatever he is, he's yelling and talking and emoting all of these lines of dialogue throughout the movie. But all the dialogue sounds like it's written for somebody my age. And you can barely understand what he's saying at times because his pronunciation is like that of a 6-year-old trying to pronounce adult words. And at times I had to rewind it and so I could hear what it was he was saying because I couldn't make out what the hell he was saying because it sounded like a 6-year-old, trying to pronounce some really complicated terminology. And he was the smartest person in this whole film. He knew more than all the older kids. He knew more than the adults. And he was just spouting on and on about everything as though he was a godlike character. I don't get it. I don't know what the point of this is. Maybe in the book he's like this, but the movie didn't explain how this 6-year-old kid is this wise, talking, he's talking like he's 45 years old and he's got a college degree and all this experience and he's just spouting off all these dialogue lines. And I'm like, who is this kid and how is this somehow believable? Well, it wasn't believable. But it's not the biggest flaw of this movie. It's just one thing on my list. And let's go to the next page of audience reviews before I get too sidetracked. Half a star, September 28, 2019. It sucked. Didn't follow the book. The only redeeming character was the boy, but that was only because he was cute. The cuts were absolute shit and made everything far less enjoyable. Hated it. Yeah, it was very disjointed. It went from radically different places. Even when you were in the same area physically, it radically changed up the set pieces in a very strange fashion. And so it was like you were moving between all these disconnected places, but physically in the story, you were still standing in the same place. Very weird. 1 star, September 23rd. Was so incredibly disappointed by this movie. Half a star. This was boring trash, confusing, and a complete waste of time and money. Don't watch this, and there was only like 3 good parts. This movie gets an F. Half a star. Disgusting, boring, headache, stupid, cringy, awful, revolting, sad, bad acting, just plain horrible. Don't recommend. Wow, they really don't like this, huh? Half a star. I can't believe that Disney managed to get some amazing actors and resources and come up with a movie that I couldn't even watch past the first 10 minutes without feeling like it was torture. Very disappointing. Yeah, it draws everything out, even when it's got all the right elements and theme and everything going for it in a particular scene. It has to drag it out unnecessarily long. I mean, why? I don't know. Why did they need to pad the running time? You could have cut like 30 minutes out of this movie and it would have been better. It would have moved. The pacing would have been better. It just dragged every single scene out, milked it like it was trying to squeeze some kind of juice out of an orange that had already been well juiced. Very disturbing. What else is on my list? Yeah, shaky cam. I don't know why it does this. At the beginning of the film, like the first 30 minutes, we get a lot of shaky cam, handheld shaky cam. I don't know why. It's not doing it to show you action. Like, we're not in a Jason Bourne film. We're in a slow, drawn out kids feature at the beginning of this. And it's got a shaky cam, handheld, moving around, and I don't know what they're trying to achieve, and they're doing it in just boring dialogue scenes. And then I noticed at the end of the running time, they don't do that anymore, and everything's set up in a traditional cameras on dollies and steady cams and stuff, very traditional way of doing it. But at the beginning, it's all handheld shaky cam, and I'm like, what is this? Some experimental director or something? But it goes away at a certain point, and I don't know why, what the purpose of that was. Yeah, welcome to Candyland or welcome to CGI Land. When we went into the fantasy universe part of it, I'm just thinking, wow, welcome to CGI Land. But it's more accurately like perhaps welcome to Candyland. Um, Oprah, yeah, Oprah's all gigantically huge, and I don't know why. Um, at a certain point, she starts out, we're introduced to her, some kind of witch queen or something. Oprah, all dressed up in this weird outfit, and she's got like diamond glitter lipstick on and all this heavy eyeshadow, and it's very weird, and she almost looks evil to me. And she's very huge, like maybe she's 4 or 5 stories tall, like she's a giant, and she walks around with this kind of translucent effect at her bottom where her feet would normally be. She's floating, this gigantic floating giant. And when I first saw her, I thought she was evil, and I'm thinking little kids would probably get that impression too, that she was some kind of evil giant character. And then later in the film, like about 35, 40 minutes in, all of a sudden we pop to a new setting and she just suddenly becomes regular sized Oprah, even fatter looking and in the same type of weird outfit. And she's not any longer this gigantic magical queen. She's very much just like regular Oprah now. I don't know what that was supposed to achieve, either the big Oprah or the smaller one. It was very strange, and she felt like a villain, when she was first introduced. And I could just imagine the little kids looking at her in the theater and going, "Ah, Mom, what is that?" It was very, very off-putting. That's why I think this movie, it didn't know who it was aiming for. Sometimes it's like aimed at little kids and preaching to them like they're little kids, and then other times it's like they're aiming at teens with a teen romance, and then other times it's aiming for adults, like maybe somebody my age. It's very strange. Let's see what else is on my list. Yeah, the kids would be asleep. If you took kids to the theater, they're either going to be asleep or running around throwing popcorn at each other because they're not going to be able to sit through this thing. The scenes just go on way too long. Every scene, it doesn't matter what the purpose of the scene is, it just has to be stretched out to pad the running time. It's very noticeable. But let's continue. 2.5 stars. Little odd to follow. Yeah, you think it's a little odd to follow. It's very odd to follow. I think you mean difficult to follow. 3 stars. There aren't many of these around. The story didn't fit together and didn't hold my attention, but was visually stunning. Yes, I agree. 2 stars. This film could be so much more with its casting choices, but the story never takes it to the next level. Sure, it looks good, but that's about it. Yeah, that's pretty much it. And it is very strange. Rotten Tomatoes does not list all the cast members. There are a lot of big time actors that show up in very small roles in this. And yes, Disney got them all together in this project, spent a crap ton of money on visual effects, and yet we got this 27% audience score film, and we got it with only 8,663 reviews. So that tells you this thing is, as bad as it is, it's been forgotten about already. Even for something on Netflix, this is a very small number of audience reviews. It says a lot right there. Now, 319 critics and only 42% of them said this wasn't rotten. I'll have to agree. 27% is totally fair. If you just want to watch a lot of crazy visual effects and marvel at something kind of unique in some ways at times, go ahead and watch this. But if you don't want to be bored, if boredom really pisses you off, do not watch this. And I will see you again on the next episode of Rotten Reviews.